Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Parents Tent presentation. We are very pleased to have you all with us today. Hopefully, you can hear me well. My name is Caitlin, and I am the Undergraduate Orientation Programs Coordinator with Campus Life and Engagement at McGill University, which is a very long title just to say that I have a big hand in all of your new students' orientation and transition universities at the university, welcoming them to McGill, getting them set up and prepared for success in their first year. So yeah, welcome to this panel. We are very excited to have you here. I am joined today by several of our panelists. We have Cindy Owen. Maybe everyone can give a little wave. We'll do proper introductions as the event progresses. We also have Nikki Marotra and Matt Hausman, our two parents who will be on the panel today with us. So every year we invite new parents and families to Parents Tent, which we normally would host under a big giant white tent on campus. But as you know, for the fall, we are staying virtual this year as we continue to sort of navigate our way through this transition period of returning to campus and, obviously ongoing public health regulations. So I'm very excited to see how many of you have joined us today. I think we have wow, the number keeps going up. We have about 225 people right now, which is very, very exciting. So welcome, everyone. As you know, for the fall 2021 term, McGill will return to in-person teaching for the first time in over a year. Students, of course, are all in Montreal. And as new parents, and maybe there's a couple of students in the audience attending with their parents, you're probably looking to McGill for guidance and support. So please know that you are not alone in this, and that the McGill community is here to help. A few of them, again, like I said, are here with us now, and you'll get a chance to hear from them later on. So just to go over the sort of agenda for today, so we will be having a short presentation from Cindy Owen, who is a wellness advisor, local wellness advisor at McGill University, specifically for resident students. And then we will be having a panel again with Cindy and then the two parents that I mentioned earlier, Nikki and Matt. And then that will be the end of the presentation. So, we can begin with the short presentation on key resources from the Student Wellness Hub team. So I think if we could pull up those slides. And yep, perfect. And Nikki and Matt, we will see you later for the panel. So this is the Supporting Your New Student presentation. I'm just going to do the intro for Cindy, and then Cindy will take it away. Lots of expertise coming from there. So the first thing that we always do with our presentations is we talk about campus life and engagement. So like I said, who is campus life and engagement? So CLAY, that's our sort of common term. So our mission is to facilitate new and returning students' integration into the McGill community and to support their sort of university academic personal success. So we work a lot with promoting and encouraging co-curricular involvement and to connect them, engage them with opportunities to develop their capacity to make positive change on campus and their communities. This is because we hear a lot of feedback from students that the best way to make the most of your time at university is to sort of get involved. It helps students create supports for themselves, which leads to success both personally and academically at university. Yep, so and then I just want to give a shout out to today's presentation, which is hosted by the McGill Alumni Association. Now, despite the name, this is not just for graduates. There are services and programs in place to support students and parents throughout their sort of time at McGill, as you can see by this panel that is being hosted today. So from helping students navigate their transition to university to providing parents with opportunities to connect with other parents, there are lots and lots of ways that the McGill Alumni Association can help you. So we've linked two websites here where you should be able to click and visit the McGill Alumni websites. All of these documents that we will be using today, including this presentation, are shared in the sort of in the handout section of the GoToWebinar. So you can, if you're interested in seeing those, you can click there. And without further ado, I will pass it over to Cindy, who can introduce herself and continue on with the presentation.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. I really appreciate that. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining online. Caitlin is right. It used to be held under this huge tent. I miss that energy and that franticness and everyone's emotions coming together, but I feel like I can still feel it here through the screen. So who am I? My name is Cindy Owen. This is my third year as the Wellness Advisor in McGill Downtown Residences. We have several other wellness advisors. We're all mental health workers who kind of both specialize in our areas, but also support the students regardless. They can just come to us if they are in those areas. So as you can see in the slide, we have wellness advisors, or LWAs are also called, in residences for our Two-Spirit and LGBTQ community. Arts has 1.5, education, engineering, graduate, and postdoctoral doctoral studies, IB and POC students, international, law, McDonald campus, management, music, sciences, and varsity sports each have their own wellness advisor. So some students can utilize us in many different ways. If you have an international student who's a part of engineering and also is in varsity and lives in residences, they will be able to use all of us. We're really quite easy to book with. You just go to that website, mcgill.ca/LWA. You pick the one that works for you. You kind of see which one you like the vibe of, and the students can book along with us. We have a lot of experience. I've been working in the field of kind of mental health and social services for 13 years, primarily with this age group. I love this age group, and I'm very excited for this year. So thank you again for joining us. And definitely, I'm always going to give a shout out to my team because I love us. So definitely, tell your kids, or if you yourself are a student, book with us. So this presentation is really, I know we each have our own individual questions, but this presentation is to really get us on the same page. So let's all just get on the same page and agree that change is very hard, especially this year, because change has been the name of the game for the past 2 years. It's just been constant change. I think all of us would almost like some kind of monotony and things that we're used to and familiarity, but unfortunately, that's not where we're at. So change is hard. So we're really just going to give you an overview of just services that are here at McGill. And I know that there's been already countless hours that have been spent trying to get this new student ready to go to McGill. But this may figure out many things, but let's just try to kind of focus on those main things that you can advise to your students or to yourselves. So there's 6 areas of adjustments that I'm going to go over in this presentation. Just one, the emotional aspects, which is obviously where I'm, mainly focused in for my field, but really it's that difficulty of, I love the I'm not crying, you're crying. It's the homesickness, the fear, the stress, strategy for dealing like different mental health issues. There's a lot that comes out at this time. It's a huge moment, and they're, students' brains are just on fire with just change and excitement, but panic, and I want to do this right, and I have to pick the perfect career. It's all these things. It's very emotional. For that, we really want to suggest the Student Wellness Hub, which includes us LWAs. We also have the Peer Support Center. I'll wait for the next slide to change. There we go. Thank you, Bianca. So the local wellness advisors, but the Student Wellness Hub also includes physical and mental health as well. They can book online for that or call. They just go to the Hub website, so McGill.ca, you search Hub, everything. Also, the Office of the Dean of Students is a really unique place that I find it takes a little while for students to figure out, but it's there for you. They can figure out at any time. It's also great because professors can, if they're concerned about a student, they can actually alert them. We also have the Office for Sexual Violence Response and Education, both preventatively and responsively and reactively if necessary. So if something does, traumatizing does occur, they can always utilize that office as well. So that's really where we're looking at for that emotional support, emotional help that's both reactive and preventative. So this is the time to really kind of get that strong foothold. It's the most preventative time at all because it's at the beginning. Really sets up a student for success. The next one is academic. That feeling of, IB promised me that I did well in high school, so therefore I should be doing amazing here. These challenges really include developing self-regulatory behavior, so like new time management, autonomy, independence, establishing relationship with professors or instructors, teaching assistants. It's a whole new world that they're kind of facing on their own. It's also managing classes and the academic workload. 5 classes doesn't sound like a lot from high school, where you're used to 12 or, so many in a day, but it's a lot heavier workload, and it's learning how to manage that. This is also where, this is the reason that a student is here. So it's just outlining that it takes time. We think that we're going to be used to it because we've been going to school our whole lives. It's different. It's a new environment to get used to. So that's where we really suggest First of all, just very simple, we have tutoring at McGill. So tutoring services, peer tutoring from student associations. We also have the OST, which is the Office for Students with Disabilities. It looks at time management workshops. I have to push workshops as much as possible. There's something that so many people are afraid to utilize, but are actually really amazing. They're usually just one shot, maybe 2 sessions. You can learn so much at them. There's also access advisors and academic accommodations. We also have Skills 21, which is workshops to help those kind of situations that we're dealing with presently and looking at those. We also have the Access Office Hours, Attend Tutorials, McGill Writing Center, and the Francophone Student Support. This is a French city. There's definitely, you can get by just knowing English, but it's always good to kind of immerse yourself so you feel a little bit more grounded when you're kind of engaging in the, outside the McGill bubble. Okay, the next one is social. This is definitely the biggest theme of students coming to see me in residences. Friends everywhere, but also, I think we've all had that moment in our lives where we're, standing in a room full of people, but we feel like we're not connecting. It's a huge challenge to make new friendships, experiencing change in relationships, discovering who we are, establishing who we are, and trying to figure out who socially identifies with us. Developing strategies for living with roommates, new neighbors, handling social situations, peer pressure, just trying to figure out your own identity and who you are and trying to get to know what that means. There are supports for this, which is obviously Clay, who I love collaborating with, and Clay is awesome, and shout out to Clay. There's also the Student Society of McGill University, which is a first-year council. Really great place to get involved. And getting involved kind of sometimes reduces that anxiety, reduces that feeling of panic, because you feel like you have a job to do. It can reduce the awkwardness sometimes of just trying to make a friend. There's also the Faculty Undergraduate Society, so there's SUS, OS, MUS, or just, you can look at it as the Science Undergraduate Society, Arts Undergraduate Society. We love acronyms here, and that's really what they stand for. We also have freshman student societies, U0 and U1 reps. Also in residences, there's Residence Life. They can get involved there, talk to their floor fellows, talk to their Residence Life facilitators, follow McGill Residency Instagram. There's also orientation leaders and student helping students, which is a first friend, new student to new students, mentorship programs, really, really cool. And also then usually they can give back the year after and really get other students involved. Intellectual. This is a hard one to really define when a student is presenting with this, but it's also a really important one. Everything is so cool, I'm changing my major. There's this panic now that people must rush and hurry as much as possible and figure out who they are and what it is they want, but also that they're figuring out who they are and what they want may not be what they initially thought. They have this maybe need and impulse to jump around, which also might be actually good for them. But experiencing a shift in previously held values is a normal thing. It's a moratorium that's necessary. Feeling uncertainty about choosing a major is also really normal. That's also a big thing that I get in students where they're U0, they're 17 or 18 years old, and they're like, I haven't decided what I want to do for the next 40 years of my life. It's normal. There's an intellectual challenge to that that's so important, and it's a good one to go through. But also, taking calculated risks that move outside the comfort zone is good. That's where we build confidence, is learning how far we can jump and how well we land. And sometimes falling on your face is a really good learning. Obviously not too much on your face, but that's why it's good with support and discussing with people. So there we really suggest CAPS, so Career Planning Services. They are amazing. They will do aptitude tests with you. They will send you out to be a worker for a day. They will do so much with you. They are trained counselors who will work with the person to figure out what suits them. There's also Life After Your Degree and Student Affairs Office, so the SAOs. SAOs are also really good for your faculty or your area if you really want to know how to kind of specify your area. There's also departmental advisors, career internship advisors. There's a lot of choice that happens here, but once they kind of settle on it, there can also be disappointment along with it. Sometimes it's not always what we expect. A lot of us also want to be, chefs when we're younger because we love food, and then we realize it's a lot of working in a kitchen that's hot and, horribly busy and all those other things. We all have to realize and come to terms with what we thought a job or career was versus what it actually can be. That's a normal part of growing up. It's okay to just kind of support the student or support yourself with that change because it is normalized. Cultural. This one I think is a feeling that someone can have without realizing that they're having it. It can just feel like an othering. There's so many different people in this world. For some students, this is their first time in a different city for this long, without their family, without their core unit. It's trying to live with a new, diverse student body around so many people who just live and think so differently. You know, sometimes it goes as simple as the way that someone puts the toilet paper roll on the roll itself and which way it should go. You know, people have screamed at each other about these things. There's just different ways to live, and it can be very jarring for some people. Adjusting to language differences amongst classmates, roommates, faculties. Montreal has a very unique culture to it, getting used to the culture of the city, especially since we've all been in the culture of our homes for the last 18 months. And also understanding your own bias-related belief system is kind of reflecting on your own culture and kind of seeing what it is that you like or don't like. Montreal's a great place to do that. McGill's a great place to do that. But it can be a bit jarring at first for a person who's realizing maybe this is what they're going through. For that, we have the International Student Services, really great, good activities going on there. McGill International Student Network is also awesome. Smooth, there's cultural clubs in their student society. And also the Office in Religious and Spiritual Life, Morsel, is lovely. Morsel is really good for that social connection, that cultural connection, and that religious connection. It's not just that you need a religion, so it's about spirituality and really connecting to that. This is a place where you really want to create and help build connection. Okay, so this one I think we've all had to go through, and we're going to witness a lot of going through this, which is the financial. Being an adult sucks. Lattes are $5. The shock I see with students who realize, I mean, in residence alone, they're like, I can't believe I had to buy a towel and this is how much it is. Like, the just shock and awe. It's hard to figure out how to budget. It's hard to understand just the, you know, it's just something that you don't even realize needs to be open until it is. The cost of things, finding jobs if necessary, and also thriving at those jobs, balancing that work life. It's a struggle, but it's a good one to try it out in when you're young, so when you have that energy a little bit more, hopefully. But it's really, it's something that's a shock to the system, but it's so important to learn. So we really advise people when they do want to learn about this is to look at scholarships and student aid, My Future, and also just their student accounts, just keeping that in mind, keeping on top of those things. It's a really difficult thing to get used to, but it's one that is so important and that we need for the rest of our lives. So these are the resources and links. There's so many here. Tutorial, writing center. There's so much at McGill. I went to McGill, and when I started working here, I felt so silly about things I didn't know that existed here. It's really good to get that out now because there's so many things that are happening every single day. So many workshops, so many groups, so many activities, clubs. It's just so good to just try them and also see what you like and figure out what you like. I really, really encourage that. And also just to take in that information, take it slow, but also kind of get yourself a little bit into it as much as you can. It's a good little handoff until especially classes start. But even then, change it up and get brave and get bold. So that's the presentation. I know people have their questions, so I really just want to give that broad spectrum of just what's going on here and what's happening and what resources exist. But thank you so much for hearing me out. I really appreciate it. I think there's so many good things that are happening at this campus. And so I really appreciate that opportunity to hear me speak. And I guess we'll go to questions. Here you go, Caitlin, off to you.
Thank you so much, Cindy, and thank you for that wonderful presentation. I think it was a really good holistic look at all of the different aspects where students might have trouble adjusting or just have to adjust in general. So thank you for that. And like I said in the beginning, for parents, especially with that last slide with all of the resources, the links to everything, if you are interested in that, you want to refer back to it at any point during the year, you can find a copy of that presentation in the handouts sort of toolbar for GoToWebinar. So I'm going to invite our two parent panelists back at this point. Before we start the Q&A sort of session, I just want to remind everyone that you can submit your questions, like Cindy said, in the chat at any point. There is a chat feature in the toolbar for GoToWebinar. We have two wonderful colleagues who are joining us, who are monitoring the chat and will be assisting in answering questions. We have Connie, an access advisor, and Bianca Brunetti, who is also a wellness advisor like Cindy. So we have lots of people here to answer your questions and make sure that you leave with the information that you are looking for. So yeah, please don't be shy. You know, this is your chance to hear from fellow McGillians. So if you have questions for the Q&A panel, if you have questions for Cindy after the presentation, if you have questions for the parents, if you have questions even for me at Clay, please feel free to put them in the chat now as we will be starting the Q&A. So I'm just going to briefly introduce the parents so you get a little bit of an idea of who they are and how they are connected to McGill. So first we have Matt Hausman. Matt, if you'd like to give a little wave. So Matt is a proud parent of a 2021 graduate. His son majored in economics with a minor in political science from the Faculty of Arts, and he was involved with the Economics Students Association. And Matt is the general manager of a social impact startup in the education space. And after a decade of living in the Boston area, along with his wife, has become a digital nomad. And Nikki is the proud mama bear of 4, 3 kids and 1 dog, 2 who chose McGill as their university. So her eldest daughter, which is me, graduated in 2020 with a degree in pharmacology and a minor in French language and literature. And then while juggling floor filming duties and SMU and SUS, and a lot more extracurriculars. And then her second daughter has just entered her 4th year in environmental and developmental studies and is working for the McGill Office of Sustainability. And Nikki is an environmental nut, passionate about leaving this world beautiful and intact for future generations, and is also a former nomad who traveled and lived in many different countries before finally settling in beautiful Canada. So I'm not currently seeing any questions in the chat right now. So I think we'll start with one of the questions that were pre-submitted. So the first one that I have, is there any advice for students coming from abroad experiencing winter for the first time? So maybe if Matt, if you're from Boston, maybe I'll pass it over to Nikki, who I know did not come from Canada. You think you're unmuted. You're unmuted.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Caitlin. So I would strongly recommend if you're going to be living in Canada, major part, especially Montreal, you'll be doing a lot of walking. So I would invest in a good pair of boots and a winter jacket. It will take you for a long journey for 4 years and keep you warm, and you never have to worry. So invest in a good pair of winter boots and jacket.
And Matt, I don't know if you have anything to add to that as an experienced Boston native.
So I do. So I would say layers. So first of all, boots, absolutely. On the jacket, it doesn't have to be expensive because there's always that debate that goes on in the parent group. And layers. My son found that he had a jacket, a sweatshirt, and like sort of on and off during the day. So I'd highly recommend layers.
All right,
Also,
perfect. Thank you.
You get something called hot paws, or the ones you snap. Do you know what I'm talking about? You insert them. So if you're going out for events, which many of the students will do, in Canada, winter is like a normal day. You go out, you still go outdoors for long hours. So you get these hot paws that you break and you put them in your boots or your fingers in your gloves, and they'll keep you warm for 8 hours to 6 hours. So if you're going for outdoor events, I would recommend buying a few and just keeping it for your kids so they can just snap them and put them in their gear.
Other recommendation, though, is also long johns. So it's like thermal pants or thermal shirts that you put on as a layer. Those keep it in. Also nylons work under the pants as well. But also like definitely like the layers in the boots 100%. Just it's not a dry cold, it's a wet cold, like it's a humid wet cold in Montreal. So it's like also get ready to like remove the layers inside because it's gross, and then you go back outside. Like it's really about layers you can remove as well. It's definitely it builds character. I'll say that it definitely builds character.
Yeah, for sure. So we do have a question in the chat now. It's, can parents have access to student accounts? So I'm assuming this is related to Minerva. I don't know if either of our parents have experience with this. Matt, do you want to share about that?
Yeah, so I would start with Canadian privacy laws means everything goes to your student, and that's just the privacy laws here. Your student then, and so you'll see a lot where people say, oh, I didn't know about that. And I always respond with, talk to your kid. So within Minerva, your student can give you access to certain parts of it. And I know our son did that because we have boys, so we stayed on top of the bills because they wouldn't remember that. But so yes, you can in Minerva. Your student will have to give you that access. But again, I really will say, like, part of the culture of McGill and really of Canadian universities is sort of students stepping up. So if you don't know about something, ask your child.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks so much. And so then our next question is, what is the best way for students to transition for the fall, from fall to winter semester? So dealing with that sort of in between, they've come from their first semester and, maybe they've struggled a little bit. Now they've come back home, they've had a little chance to rest, reset, and then they're now transitioning to the winter semester. So what is the best way to deal with that sort of in between time transition? Maybe Nikki, we can go to you.
So I would say it's tough for the kids. It's very tough, especially the first year, and for parents. But I would say when my kids came home, I would just enjoy the time with them and tell them to de-stress, spend quality time with them. So, and reassure them that this is all teething problems, that it will pass, and be open, have conversations, listen, try and, if you have an opinion, keep it to yourself for a bit, listen, chew on it, and then reassess and come back and discuss with the child what their options are. You, like Cindy said, there are so many options in McGill. You can reach out to, the student can reach out to student services, to their flow fellow, to their mental health advisor. So encourage your child to reach out, and that will help them cope.
And Cindy, I don't know if you have anything to add from the sort of more wellness perspective, student
I think
services.
I think there was a hope over the winter break that there'll be a reset, but I don't know that I've ever heard someone actually coming back being like, I am so refreshed. That 2 weeks off was exactly what I needed and I'm ready to go. Like, I think it's about maybe reminding students to go easy on themselves and that this is a marathon, not a sprint. 15 weeks as a semester is like the longest and shortest period of time ever recorded, I think, where it feels like, oh, it's only 15 weeks, but also, how is it still 15 weeks? So I think that winter break is take it easy on yourself. Don't try to jam pack it with, oh, I'm going to go to a cabin and I'm also going to see friends, and almost one day at a time, slow down your brain and give your brain time to just be numb a little bit, do nothing, and take that period, because otherwise it's going to be that go, 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 and it's hard to maintain that all the way through to February to March to April. It really feels a little bit rougher, so go easy on yourself.
And
Yeah.
if I could add real quickly, you said something really important. The winter break at McGill, that between the end of the semester and the start of winter is really short. And so you have to understand, like, my son will tell you, if you wanted to know like what the last day of exams was, talk to my kid, because he had the last exam in like 6 of his 8 semesters. And so he was getting home like the 23rd, like right before Christmas, and a week and a half later turning around and coming up. And so we pretty much figured out, like, we had very low expectations of his time. He chose to hang out with us, but also go hang out with his friends. But the best thing you can do is sort of give them like space and listen, as Nikki said, like, for sure. But it's a short break, so be ready.
And then we have another question. Are there any suggestions for a student with test anxiety or just general exam academic performance anxiety? Nikki, I don't know if you would like to go first.
Sure. So basically, even I get very anxious. So when I have to sit interviews or exams as a kid, so I would say do not put pressure on yourself. It all evens out at the end of the year, or you have the next year to catch up. There, again, go back to your mental wellness coach, speak to them. Speaking, I find when you verbalize what you're feeling as to keeping it to yourself, you kind of unload so you can take more, and then you will get steps on and ideas on how to deal with your anxiety. Your coach will help you with that. So do not put pressure on yourself. Do not expect to be that first day student, that you've been in school and always on the top. Remember, it's so many people, so many students coming together from all over the world. So I find many kids, my kids sometimes were putting pressure on themselves saying, oh, I'm not as good. But you are. It's just that everyone's finding their ground, and don't put pressure on yourself.
Yeah, and then from a sort of McGill resource standpoint, I know that we can also suggest local wellness advisors such as Sydney, I keep calling Sydney, sorry, Cindy, regularly, meet with students who have lots of resources available. They can connect with their local wellness advisors from their faculties, as well as other resources such as the Office for Students with Disabilities, if it's more of a sort of generalized anxiety disorder. The Office for Students with Disabilities can help with accommodations as well.
Also, I just have to give a shout out. There's literally a workshop called Skills for Managing Test Anxiety. That's only, if I recall correctly, it's like an hour and a half. It's quick, it's fast. You can go to it. We just had one last week for it. Like, you can register on the website. So Skills for Managing Test Anxiety. I will also always remind people, which is people having anxiety around a test is a good thing because it means you care about the test. We never have anxiety around stuff we don't care about. I don't have anxiety around, reality TV shows because I don't care. It means that you're passionate, you're driven. It's just utilizing that energy in a different way. So really go to the workshops, go to your wellness advisor. It's a great place.
Yeah, perfect. And then we have a next question. So for parents, how do you let go, respect your students' boundaries? So maybe Matt, you could take this one. Bit of a loaded question, I know.
I'm laughing about that. You know, it's kind of funny, and forgive me, I don't know the format of frosh this year, but when my son went off, we left him on a Sunday morning at Upper Res, drove down the hill. My wife was driving, she cried. I stared out the window because that's what I do. My youngest in the back is like, are you guys going to be like this all the way home? And like, we didn't hear from him for almost a week. And all I knew is my youngest would say, oh, I'm seeing really, interesting Snapchats from him. So we knew he was alive, and that was good. And so a little bit of, especially this first week as they're settling in, give them space, because they're all the things that Cindy talked about in terms of they're figuring out who they are and where they are and all of this. A lot of it happens now. And we, with our son, we would send a text saying, no reply needed, hope you're having fun. Literally, that was it. No calls, and just letting them know that you're open if you need it. But I think especially in the first week or so, give them the space they need.
Perfect, thank you. Moving on to our next question, we're getting some questions about healthcare coverage for students. So from my understanding, we have a domestic and an international parent here, so maybe we can get two different perspectives. Nikki, if you'd like to go first from the domestic sort of perspective.
Yeah, so you got OHIP that covers you throughout Canada, and you also have, if you're working, your private medical coverage that will cover your child. So we opted not to take our kids not to take the medical coverage offered by McGill, simply because we had additional coverage through our jobs. If you are an international student or you don't have medical coverage from your place of employment, I would recommend taking the medical coverage offered through McGill.
Yeah, just to clarify there, so international students are automatically enrolled in McGill's health insurance plan. The plan that Nikki's talking about is the additional SMU health and dental coverage, which is optional for all students. So whether you're domestic or international, you can opt in or out of that. So Matt, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, I think that you just, and we have you just have to kind of balance, like the McGill Health and Wellness did really well. there were a couple of times we had to go outside of it. And then the McGill International Parents page will provide you all the resources you need because someone has had that challenge before.
I also want to add that on Clay website in the pre-arrival webinars, there is a video on navigating healthcare in Montreal and McGill that's been recorded. That was done by Connie, who is the access advisor, who's answering questions in the chat. So that was recorded just maybe about a month ago now, or 2 months ago. So it's just answering all those questions about what's covered and who's covered, but also there's one for international students as well. So there are those 2 pre-arrival webinars.
Yeah, and those can all be found on mcgill.ca/first year.
Caitlin, if I may just say a piece of advice for parents is if your child is feeling sick, I would recommend them to kind of reach out to the medical practitioner ahead to get an appointment. Don't wait till you're really sick because they are busy. And with COVID, winter coming, they get really busy, and I guess there are limited slots available. So don't wait till you get really sick. If you're kind of already halfway there, I would advise my child to pick up the phone and make an appointment. If they don't need it, they can cancel it. But if you really need it, you can't get one. So just be aware of that.
I also want to add that Quebec law has recently changed that now all Quebec public institutions, including the McGill Wellness Hub, have to do initial appointments in person. They are no longer allowed to do telehealth for GP general practitioners. There is Maple though, where they can do an online appointment if there is a need for a prescription that's just fast and online, but that's in those webinars.
And additionally, students can call, oh, sorry, I just want to add that students can call 311, which is, you can speak to a certified nurse, I believe, if they're 811, sorry, 811 in Montreal, and they can get advice as to whether sort of it's something that they should see a doctor about, or if, it's kind of okay to just wait it out, sort of, if they're unsure. Sorry, Matt.
No, and I was going to actually say that, the 811, because that's really helpful. And then in Montreal or Quebec, I guess it's probably a Quebec thing, and this is, I'm speaking very American right now, I acknowledge this, but pharmacists are like your best friend. So like your student can go in and say, I'm feeling this, and they will come out from behind the counter and walk you and say, you should do this, and like help you. And that's a big deal. And it's for Americans, it's very, very, very different. And so that's a really great resource to remind your kids of.
Perfect, thank you so much. Our next question is, can you talk about any challenges first-year students can face? Maybe I'll give Matt and Nikki a little bit of a chance to talk about this, and to think about this, sorry, and I'll put Cindy on the spot first.
So for first-year students will face?
Yes.
So there is something called the student life cycle, which is just like the very average stereotypical experience, which is like from September all the way to March of what a first year will go through, both from homesickness to then midterm struggle and maybe going home for the first time during Thanksgiving, because our Thanksgiving is October, if for those who are international. And then also, November is getting the results of midterms and maybe some identity crises after that. Like my one-on-one appointments triple to quadruple right before a science midterm or right after the results of the science. Like I almost know when chemistry midterms are coming because I'm like loaded up on appointments. There's really a cycle that happens. Not everyone falls within it. There is the outliers, but it's really that homesickness, isolation, identity. Imposter syndrome can be rough, and then also just feeling like I just had someone today tell me everyone gets how to do this but me. I didn't know how to not be like, are you in? Everyone's feeling that way. No one knows how to do this. That's the point. It's great though, because then that's how you get together and meet people. So there is that student life cycle. I think U of T actually has a great research piece on it, but there is the typical, and then there's incidental things like COVID that we all have to face together, but that were planned. So it's really those things though for a young new student to be going through.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cindy. We have questions about bank accounts and phone planning for students. So basically, parents are asking, what bank should I go with to sign my student for an online bank? What phone plan should I go with? That sort of thing. So any advice? We'll start with Matt.
Sure. So I'm gonna be a little bit American here, and I acknowledge this. if you're from the US and you have AT&T or Verizon, if you do the unlimited plan, they cover all of North America. And we did that because that way everything is covered. So, and that worked out really well. We're AT&T, and that worked out well for my son. From a bank standpoint, we did TD because we were in the Boston area, and there was TD US and then there's TD Canada. So we were able to just link those up. So I think it's like anything. It's sort of like when people talk about dorm, what's the best dorm? Like there's sort of not the best per se. So it's sort of what works. I know less about like Fido, the phone plans in Quebec, so I'll let you guys handle that.
And then Nikki?
Yeah, for banking, I find RBC is the most convenient simply because they have more, you know, branches within the walking area. That's the only reason. But if you go to the website, you can compare on Google, you can compare all the banks, TD, RBC, BMO, Orange, and they have a lot of student packages where if you open certain criteria, certain banking accounts, you get your banking for free. So just look into that because you don't want to unnecessarily have added expenses added on. You don't want to get them a credit. You need to get them a credit card. I would advise you getting your limited fixed amount credit card for your child so they create their own credit, and it teaches them responsibility, and they can keep on top of if they have to order their books or pay for something online, they have access to that. Book their tickets, book their trains, so when they want refunds they don't have to keep calling you. That's another thing that also I would say is when your kid is coming home, um, if they, as soon as they know their exam schedule, book their tickets to come home because it fills up really fast and the seats get sold out. So train or bus tickets, flight tickets, book that quickly. As regards to phone packages, again, there's so many out there, and normally they have tents up at McGill for the first day, but I don't know if they're doing anything online, Caitlin and Cindy. Maybe that's something y'all could put up because they need a lot of data. The kids need a lot of data. So you want a package that gives you unlimited data. That's it. My recommendation is get a package with unlimited data. But look around, especially come Thanksgiving and Black Friday, a lot of phone companies have a lot of good deals. So maybe that if you can wait a little bit, if not now, then just wait a little bit.
Perfect, thank you so much. So then I have a question for Cindy now. Could you speak to the workload that is associated with each course?
Regardless of the course, there's always going to be the competition between faculties about who has it the hardest. Also, I will say this, which becomes, the new competition becomes, you think that's bad? I have 14 midterms in one day. It becomes this new competition between students about who has it the worst and who is handling the most. The workload is a lot, but it also depends on what standards you're putting on yourself. I know some people who went their entire degrees without buying a single book. You know, it's just depends what you're doing, depends what you want for yourself. I also know people who, studied every day 6 hours a day. That's not my personal recommendation. I really do not recommend that. But it's also the first year is about learning how to study effectively, not, it's quality over quantity. I remember I have so many students who come to me and they're like, it's so weird. I'm miserable lately. I'm so tired. I'm studying like 10 to 15 hours a day. It's going really well. But I just don't feel like I have my friends anymore. It's like, yeah, there's some balancing that has to be learned. I understand there's an eagerness initially. It's important to be eager, but I always recommend that, just try it out, see what works, and learn how to study for you, because there's many different styles of studying. There's many different styles of writing. It's really figuring out, and it's going to be different than what's expected of you in high school. That's 100%. It's being okay with learning a new style. So the actual workload itself, it depends per person.
Yeah, that's very true. I can just speak as a former student. I think McGill has this official sort of recommendation, which is for every 1 hour of class, it's 2 hours of at-home work, which I think would come out to sort of 9 hours a week total between class time and at-home time, which if you times by 5 classes, that's 45 hours a week. So school is definitely a full-time job, but I will second what Cindy said, which is that the workload is not necessarily going to be distributed evenly throughout the semester. During midterms, during finals, you're going to be studying more than you are going to be during the first week of class, for example. But if a student is looking for some guideline, that whole 1 hour of class, 2 hours of at-home work is a good place to start while they figure out what works for them. I'm also seeing a question in the chat about frosh. And so I can speak to that. So orientation week has started now. So Monday, August 23rd is the official start of undergraduate orientation week. And there's two parts to it. So orientation events are what are hosted by the university. So for example, faculty orientation, we're going to be having a services fair where we've invited all of McGill's clubs, services teams, etc., to come and table. Those are orientation events, they're university run. Frosh is what you can sort of think of as your social events. You know, they are run by the Faculty Student Association. So they're affiliated with McGill, but they're not run by sort of McGill staff, if that makes any sense. They're student-run volunteers. And Frosh Week will start, Frosh will start on Thursday. So it will run from, I'm just looking at my calendar, August 26th, Thursday, which is through to Sunday, August 29th. And there are online options for frosh, and there's also a hybrid option for frosh, which is like going to be semi-in-person, semi-online, again, just due to ongoing regulations. Every faculty has a different frosh schedule. And students will be emailed, like when they sign up, they will get the schedule. I think the schedules will be released in a few days here, right? They're usually released right before frosh. None of the events are mandatory. Students can go to as many or as little as of the events that they choose. And yeah, so it's hard to say. I can only speak broadly because each frosh is very individual. But like I said, students should be getting a schedule, and if they go to our website, mcgill.ca/firstyear, we have a whole page on orientation where we have linked all of the frosh's websites, and any sort of general information about that particular frosh will be available on their website. But they don't release the schedules until right before frosh. They keep them, it's like a kind of a secret. So yeah.
Caitlin, if I just may
Yep.
say something to your previous question, then Matt and Cindy. So when one of the questions was about how the children will cope, and when Matt said don't expect them to reply, that he sent a message saying how are you, just looking in but no pressure to reply. I think that is very good, because what we did not understand as parents in the first week, and you learn, is that the children are going through frosh. That's where they get to know each other. It's a long day that they're out making friends, getting to know their place in McGill, finding out about the community, the university. Then there are late nights. So the kids are tired. And it would be nice as parents to just back off a little bit and let's say, okay, my kid's fine. No pressure. You know, how are you? Why aren't you texting me? Why aren't you responding? Where are you? What are you doing? They are busy. They are really, really busy making friends, getting to know the city, etc. So give them that space. They will respond. It's not them, it's not you. It's just a lot of factors in play. And the other one I wanted to say was, how do the children cope? There is a lot of loneliness, acceptance. They're trying to fit in. They've given up their family, their home, they're homesick, etc. So, you know, they're coping with all these emotions as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a great addition. I just see a couple questions that I can answer quickly. So the number one I see is someone has a student majoring in arts and psychology trying to get in touch with an academic advisor. She has sent emails with no response. Yep, I totally understand. You know, we have a lot of students in that situation. The academic advisors are very, very busy over the summer and in the beginning of the semester. They are just absolutely inundated with emails. So maybe it's possible that your daughter's email got lost sort of in the mix. she can come to faculty orientation. That is where her advisors will be one-on-one. It will be happening for arts on Wednesday, August 25th. So I highly recommend she signs up for that. It's free, it's all on the orientation website, and she can meet with her advisor face-to-face and ask her question face-to-face. Obviously, there will be lots of other students there, but she can put her question and they will be there. In addition, there will be a departmental fair for art students where she can meet her psychology advisor or the future psychology advisor if she's a U0 student, and again, ask questions about the program face-to-face. That's all happening Wednesday, August 25th. I also see a question about the add drop period, which I can also speak to. So someone is saying that their daughter wants to take 4 courses in order to not feel overwhelmed. Totally normal, a very popular thing that a lot of students will do in their first semester. However, she is now registered for 2 courses and is waiting until September 1st or 14th for the add drop. So yeah, so the add drop period, basically, like you said, September 14th is the end of the add drop period. So that students can basically freely add or drop courses until September 14th. Once you hit September 14th, they cannot drop or add a course without sort of, there's a few different ways. It's like you need express permission. There may also be a sort of mark on your transcript, a W if you withdraw after that deadline. So it's very important that you do your best to finalize your course schedule by September 14th. And then I see another question, Cindy, and I'm going to put this one to you because it's about vaccine passports and how they will impact students. I'm wondering if you can speak to that from a more like public health standpoint.
Yeah, so obviously a lot of MROs have come out of McGill in terms of their stance on it. Education is deemed as an essential service. There will be no passport utilized for going to university. You'll be deemed for unessential services. So Quebec's version of unessential services. This is including gyms, also, you know, haircuts. It's very like, you know, libraries. It's things that are just not deemed essential that you will have to demonstrate that you've taken the vaccine. These are also Quebec, what's the word, allocated vaccinations. So we're looking at Moderna, Pfizer. We're also looking at Johnson & Johnson. There's just a few on the list. There is a lot of information on the COVID-19 Quebec website on those things. There are English versions as well. So, you know, there's no difficulty in translation. It comes in a document that you can put on your smartphone with a QR code. So let's say you need it from another country, or you got your vaccination from another country, but it goes in line with their vaccinations. You can really get it transferred over. They'll send you the QR code. If you don't have the, you know, according to them, proper vaccinations, you can get vaccinated here immediately if you need to, you know, if you really want to engage in those services. So we do have a lot of options. Vaccinations are open for everyone. It's starting September 1st. It's really for those unessential services in terms of luxury things like movies. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think the gym is definitely an essential, but this is according to the Quebec government's law that they're looking forward into to ensure that vaccinations stay high.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Cindy. So we're getting quite a few questions as well about billing and opting out of the insurance plan. So I can just cover those quickly. So there is a really great website. If you just Google, I can't link it right now, but if you just Google McGill and then e-billing, it should be like the very first link that pops up. And it is a very, very thorough website. It goes through every single step, every deadline. It goes through the process. It covers whether you are a domestic student, a US student, or an international student. It shows you all of the options for payment. It shows you how to make a payment and all of that. So I highly, highly recommend looking at that website. But how it works at McGill is every month you will get an e-bill. And so the first e-bill you should have already gotten, and they will, sorry, I should clarify. When I say you, I mean your student. So your student will be getting these e-bills through Minerva, which is the one McGill portal for everything. They will get an email notification to their McGill email. The e-bill is released within the first few days of the month and then is due at the end of the month. So tuition, for example, was billed in the August e-bill. It was released in early August and it will be due at the end of the month. For any students wondering about housing, residences, those sorts of fees, those will be included in the September e-bill. So the first few days of September, you'll be getting the September e-bill, which will include your first month's rent for residents. Rent is billed monthly. Meal plan is billed twice a year, so once per semester. So those fees will be included in the September e-bill, which will be at the end of September. Now, every month you get an e-bill, regardless of whether or not you have a chart like fees to pay. So sometimes you'll have, you know, your account will be zero. Sometimes you may have incurred, for example, printing costs that you need to pay monthly. So every month there will be a bill. And then the other thing was insurance. So for any domestic students or who have basically anyone who has Canadian citizenship and Canadian healthcare, like a provincial healthcare plan, you can opt out of these optional SMU and SMU health and dental insurance. And the opt-out period is 2 weeks before the end of September, which will be the billing period. And you can opt out on Minerva. So if your student would like to opt out of that health insurance, they can do so on Minerva. We have another question. And then what kind of mental support services, I'm assuming this is mental health support services, are available to new students? So maybe Cindy, I could pass that over to you.
Awesome. Okay, so this is my time to brag about how amazing I am. No, so we have, for all students who are new and moved into any residences, both downtown at Mac campus, you have a wellness advisor, which I'm a mental health worker. I also have someone who's part-time in residence as well, named Margot Nossel. They're also mental health workers, so everyone can utilize us who lives in residences. If you're at Mac campus, there's a Mac wellness advisor as well. We are all trained mental health workers. If, let's say, you need a bit of a heavier hand, you already have a diagnosis, you want a bit of extra work with it, you can start with us. We'll point you in the right direction. Part of like my home milieu is kind of setting you up in the right place, so you don't have to like dig and search and find and don't know where to go, and it's so confusing and every website's in French. We will set you up with that. If you're a new student and you're not in residences, that's also fine too. If you're international, you have a wellness advisor. If you have a faculty, which you should if you attend here, you have an advisor. You have a wellness advisor everywhere. There are counseling services as well. You can also do that calling the website, calling the hub, and then getting a counselor as well. It's just the wellness advisor is good at just knowing Quebec, knowing Montreal, and just knowing where to go if you do need a bit of that heavier supports. You know, and really just if you're like, I already know I need a psychiatrist, I already have one back home, I need one here, you're gonna have to start with one of us anyways, because here in Quebec, you never start with psychiatrists, we always start at general practitioners. We'll get you that appointment too. And we're all awesome and great and funny, so, you know, book with us just to chat.
Yes. And then I have a question for the parents, which is how can you support your student when they are feeling overwhelmed and anxious? So I know we've touched on this a little bit before, but maybe just to elaborate a little bit more, you know, when your student is feeling overwhelmed and anxious, like what can you do, speaking from the parent perspective? So maybe Nikki, you can go first.
Thanks, Caitlin. So what I've learned is your child just wants you to listen. They don't want you to give advice, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. They just want you to listen and be there. Please keep the lines of communication open. Do not be judgmental. They're going to find themselves here. And this is going to form them into the human being, into the person they're going to be. So what I have learned from my children is please zip my lip and listen to what they're saying. Truly listen to what they're saying. And be supportive. That's the best thing you can do. No matter right or wrong, we all make mistakes in life. We've made mistakes. The kids will make mistakes, but be their safety net, and please verbalize it. Tell them that you are there no matter what. The door is open, no matter if their grades fall, no matter if they get into some silly, you know, thing they did at university. Just know that they got to make it right. You will help them make it right, and you are always there for them. That's it. Just one point on safety, Caitlin. I don't know if you'll still have the buddy system. Cindy, do y'all still have the buddy system, whether when the kids go laid out at night and nervous to walk back or afraid or just have an uncomfortable feeling, that they can call the number and someone will walk home with them? I think that's a great thing that you'll do for the students, especially the new students. So maybe that's something you want to let the parents know. And the other thing I just wanted to say was um, the new students, they're so tired and so much overload that not because of them, but when they go out to the cafes, the scammers just know who to hone in on, and very often It's the first years that their laptops stolen, their phones are stolen at Tim Hortons or wherever. So just tell your child to be aware, to keep their belongings on them, not walk away, and put some sort of tracking device on.
Yeah, so I think, like Cindy was saying, Walk Safe and Drive Safe is what you're referring to. So those are student-run services where you can call and someone will either walk with you home or drive you home late at night. So again, those services will be tabling at the services fair. If your student is interested in learning more about those, services fair will be happening tomorrow. I think, Matt, if you have anything to add about supporting students who are feeling overwhelmed and anxious.
The other thing that we did a lot, especially over the last 18 months and being on the other side of a closed border from our kids, was we did a lot of Zoom, and we're a board game family, have always been. We actually played some online games together. And for my youngest, he and I took walks, and we got on FaceTime, pointed the camera out. He went up the mountain. I went around our neighborhood back in Boston, and that I just let him talk, right? And that, I think that's important.
Yeah, that sounds really lovely, actually. Thank you. So then I'm just going to take a break from asking questions, and I'm going to answer a couple of my own just to sort of get them out quickly. So we had parents ask something about if students will be able to access this presentation. So not this one in particular, but the McGill Alumni Association did do something very, very similar to this for students called send-offs, where they had panels, they could connect with fellow students. There were lots of different send-offs for different groups around the world. And then, so if you didn't attend those and you're still looking for more information, like Cindy mentioned, Clay has been giving webinars all summer, and all of them have been recorded, and so all the recordings are available. We covered lots of different topics, everything from academic expectations, and like Cindy said, health and wellness, housing. There's one for off-campus students specifically because residence housing is sort of already, in motion at this point, but off-campus housing, financial aid, all sorts of stuff. So all those webinars are there. Your students also have access to McGill 101, which is an online module hub hosted on my courses with, again, all the information they need on all those same topics. The McGill 101 modules and the webinars were complementary to each other. So all those topics are covered and the information is still there if students want to access it now. In addition, we are hosting several First Year Success Series webinars as a part of Orientation Week. With a lot of the same topics covered. We will have the OSD presenting, we will have the McGill Scholarships and Financial Aid presenting, we will have Teaching and Learning Services presenting. So if your students have any questions or want some help with any of those subjects, they can attend those webinars as a part of Orientation Week. And those will be happening on August 30th and 31st of next week after frosh. Another question that we're getting is about international students and support for immigration issues. The immigration experts at McGill are International Student Services. Maybe Kay can put the link to their website. They have FAQ with all of the questions you could possibly have about immigration on their website answered, because I think, like Matt said earlier, someone else has definitely had this problem before. And so you will not be the first person, and they've definitely got the answer. And you can also contact them directly if you can't find the answer to your question on their website. And I think there was one more that I can answer, which is, are there resources specifically for students living off campus? So yes, absolutely. Clay has a whole subsection of our office dedicated to off-campus students. We run a program called Community, which has weekly get-togethers for off-campus students where they can come, chill, hang out in non-pandemic times. Of course, we have snacks as well. So all those are there, and they do also regular events, sort of like how Residence does events for their students. We do events for off-campus students as well, where they can meet each other and learn more about Montreal and about living in Montreal. In addition, we have a specific off-campus student orientation event that is happening today. First one happened at 10 a.m., but there's a second iteration happening this evening, if your student is interested in that. And then the last one that I will address, sorry, and then I'll pass it back over to the parents, is purchasing books for the semester. So textbooks is a huge question because they're very, very expensive a lot of the time. but do not buy any books before the first day of class or before the first class. The prof will go over the syllabus with the students during the first class, and they will tell the students exactly what they need in terms of textbooks, in terms of materials, because it changes from year to year, and sometimes the prof will have alternatives to textbooks for students. Some profs are better about this than others. Some of them will not require a textbook, they'll have it be optional. So very important to actually get what the prof themselves wants before going out to buy a textbook. If you do need a textbook, there are lots of secondhand options as well. On Facebook, there are several textbook buy-sell groups where upper year students will post their old textbooks for sale, and you can get that textbook if you want to buy it secondhand. And then of course there's also the McGill bookstore, which is open, and since all students are in Montreal, they should have access to this, where you can go and buy your new textbook if that's what you want. So lots of options about that. And then since we are getting to the end of the presentation, I know we've gone a little bit over. I'm just going to ask, I think we have one or two more questions to wrap up. And so the first one is for parents, and it is, how do you keep your student motivated during this time? And what do you do if they're feeling overwhelmed and sort of having lack of motivation? And maybe Nikki, you can go first.
That's a tough one, especially when you're so far away from your child. I like to see my child when I speak to my child. So as opposed to, okay, texting, voice calls, at least once a week, I would like to have a WhatsApp or a FaceTime call or a Zoom call. And that I can gauge whether my child is doing well or not. To support them is again, listen, try and find out what the cause of the problem is, and would encourage my child to go out for a walk, like Matt says, is very helpful, and to get the resources within the residence that is available to them. The other thing is, I find to support my children is, again, just being there because you're so far away. Of course, we live in Toronto, which is a 6.5-hour drive. So yes, I would, if I find that my child's not doing too well, I would drive down. But another good thing is to get your child's friends' contact numbers if they're willing to give it to you, because then you can just have a little meal or do Uber Eats or something for them and have a fun thing for them so they get together and get them out of that rut and motivate them. So one of the things I used to do is leave little, like on a lighter note, love notes around for my kids, little messages that I would hide in places that they may find a week after I left or a month after I left, with a little gift card sometimes. So it shows your child that you are thinking about them without you physically calling or something. So one morning they may just go into the washroom, and behind a cupboard is a note from them when they open the mirror. So it's like, oh wow, that's sweet, someone's thinking about me. So just, if you're here physically, you may do something like that, or you may send mail. Even though this is a thing of the past, I found that when my daughter went to check her mailbox, there was a card from me every now and then, which would brighten her day. So that's a bit support in place as well.
Sorry, I was muted. And then Matt?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just sort of like, you're the person that knows your kid best, right? And I have one child, my youngest has diagnosed anxiety. And so like earlier we were talking about anxiety, and I'm very big about like there's anxiety and there's nervousness, and like just kind of gauging what's going on. And sometimes it's as stupid as sending a picture of our cat, which is everyone's favorite in the house. And sometimes it was the gift card, like just sending up a $25 Uber Eats gift card. It's just sort of like listening and just making sure their voice. And like I agree, like with Nikki, if you can get them face to face like this, then that helps. But just listen, and you'll know. Go with your gut.
Yeah. And then, so we're already 10 minutes over, so I'm just going to ask everyone their final piece of advice before we close. And for the parents, you know, a final piece of advice for other parents. And Cindy, I'll ask you final piece of advice for parents for how to support their students, or just for students in general. So maybe Cindy, we'll start with you first, since we just heard from both parents.
Sure, thank you. I guess my final piece of advice is honestly is to go easy on both yourself as a parent and also on yourself as a student. This is, again, as I said, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It takes time to figure out what it is. Also, there is a difference between stress and distress. A person feeling stressed out, a person feeling like they're unsure, they're overwhelmed, that's a great thing. So it means that we're learning something new. That's a growing pain. That's really just, I'm out of my element, I don't know what to do. Distress is beyond coping sustained. So really it's allowing children and students to allow themselves to sometimes be stressed and to not know and to sit in the not knowing. It's a hard place to be, but it's actually the best way to learn and build that resilience.
Yeah, perfect. That's great advice. Thank you, Cindy. And then we'll go Nikki and then Matt.
So I feel not only that kids are going through a difficult time, it's a big change for them, but as a parent, I went through uh, a big emotional change when my first daughter went to university. And it's juggling your emotions and your child's emotions. I came home and I bawled my eyes out when I went in my daughter's room. I still feel that feeling welling up again, strangely. So I can understand and empathize with each parent what you're going through. So, like Cindy said, don't be hard on yourself, and time. You need time. Both of you need time to let things just flow. If you're feeling down, if you're missing your child, there's no harm in calling or texting. They may not respond, they're in class, like I say, but at least you know you have let that emotion through, and it is getting through to your child, whether they physically respond or not. It is getting into them emotionally and mentally. The other thing is, I told the only piece of advice I give my kids is trust your instinct. If you don't feel right about something, don't do it. Walk away. Don't be pressured in signing anything or going somewhere. It's okay to say no. Just walk away, think about it. You can always go back to it, and trust your instinct is what I tell my kids.
Thank you. And then Matt?
So two things, and I'm going to be really logistical here. The first is, and I'm sorry to put it this way, McGill, but the McGill website is impossible to navigate. So whenever you want to know something at McGill, you Google it, McGill, e-bill, McGill, and it will come up every time. So I always tell parents, like, just use Google. Don't try to navigate the website. It'll just drive you nuts. And then the second is I highly, highly recommend the International Parent Group on Facebook. This is, you're going to get more support out of this. And as like an old timer now, and I'm about to become an alumni, that parents are so incredibly helpful. Even if it's my son forgot his jacket at home. Is anyone driving up to Montreal soon? Or my son is really lonely. Like, we actually have had other kids go and like seek out other kids because someone just needed a hand. So highly recommend that group to every parent. Definitely join.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I spend all summer telling students the same thing. If you want to know something at McGill, just Google what you want to know and McGill, and it will come up. So I definitely second that. So thank you so much. I just want to say a big, big thank you to all of you, all of our new parents for coming and attending and staying with us. Thank you to all of our panelists for their help today, their wonderful advice. You've all been great. Thank you to our colleagues, Bianca and Connie, who have been taking your questions in the chat. And thank you in general to the McGill Alumni Association for hosting this wonderful event and helping new parents connect with each other. So I think the key points that we can take away is that there are lots of resources at McGill available to your students. I think the toughest part is, finding out what they are. But There are lots of people there to help your students, the local wellness advisors, Clay, the Wellness Hub in general. And so you can contact all of us if you or your student are ever encountering any issues. Parents' Tent is not over, so we do have more sessions taking place over lunch from 12 to 1 p.m. this week. There's a Money Matters session, all about financial, aid, budgeting, that sort of thing on Tuesday. There's a behind the scenes look at blended learning happening on Thursday, as well as a toast to your student happening on Friday. To register for any or all of these events, you can go to the McGill alumni website, alumni.mcgill.ca/parents. And if you cannot attend, most of the events like today's will be recorded and will be available online as of September 2nd. And like I said, if you have any further questions, you can contact Campus Life and Engagement directly at clay@mcgill.ca or the Student Wellness Hub at hub.clinic@mcgill.ca. And I believe that Irene has put all of this information in the chat for you already, so you should have it all there. So thank you again so much for everyone for joining us today. Congratulations on choosing McGill. We are so excited for you. We're so excited to have you here and excited to welcome you into the McGill community as well. And we hope that you are excited as well. So stay safe and à bientôt, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today.